thank you very much for joining. It's early and we've already had about 30 minutes of good introduction, so I'll not take much of your time. We'll straight away move to the topic that is of interest, I believe, for all the insurance industries at this point of time, which is IFRS 17. Do let me know if I go a bit faster, hold me back and ask as many questions as you can. We've got approximately 90 minutes that I will be taking, and then probably if there are further questions, we'll be taking through that also. Okay. Before I start, a quick introduction about AJMS. AJMS is a boutique consulting firm. We focus on insurance as a sector, but not only on insurance as a sector, but we are there wherever there is compliance. And when I say compliance, I mean compliance with regulators, be it IFRSs, be it the Central Bank of the UAE, the Central Bank of Bahrain, or any other central bank for that matter, and also the anti-money laundering bit, which is probably one of the biggest things that is happening in this part of the world over the last 5 to 6 years, but has been, I would say, coming to the fore with the FATF reviews which are coming out, especially with the UAE, Jordan, and Oman at this point of time. Now, when we talk about AJMS, the only thing that we especially want to speak about is our clientele. So we work with the 7 of the top 10 insurance companies in UAE. We work with 5 of the top 7 jewelers in UAE. And when we talk about banks and I would say MBS, which is the money exchange business, we work with 40 of them out of 50 that is there in UAE. So that is our clientele. And our retention ratio is about 96%. So it's a firm that has been there in UAE for the last 28 years. But yes, we have co-branded ourselves as AJMS over the last 5 years. And we are also the AML advisors to Dubai Economy and Tourism. And we sit on their committees with regards to regulation that comes out on anti-money laundering. That is one leg of the thing. The other leg naturally is IFRS consulting, strategy consulting, and so on. I wouldn't be boring you guys with all those details, you would understand. Straight away moving to IFRS 17. I hope everyone can see this pretty well. IFRS 17 has been there for quite some time now. And I understand that with the regulations here, most of the companies have already started working on IFRS 17 and are publishing quarterly, I would say, parallel run results. So if you feel that my presentation is a bit basic, it's just to give you, just the feel of IFRS 17 before we get into the details. So I would quickly move to what we are going to cover today. We will have a short stint of what background and the challenges that the insurance companies today face. Not only the challenges, but probably what are the solutions to it also. We as a company, we work with around 20 insurance companies on implementation of IFRS 17 across the GCC, and have developed an in-house tool for IFRS 17 also. So I will probably talk about it later. But we'll be giving you a feel of what are the challenges that everyone is facing currently, even with parallel reporting already in place, and what are the challenges the auditors are going to face, as I believe there are a few internal auditors here as well, and what are the likely risks that the company would be facing, not only from, I would say, processes, but also from writing business. And that is where IFRS 17 is trying to change a lot. And we are trying to change approximately 150 years of accounting that insurance companies have been doing. So with IFRS 17, that accounting is going to change. I'll try to take a feel of how the presentation goes in between, with asking a few questions if you don't mind. And if you are comfortable, we move ahead on it. If you think that no, you don't wish to answer the questions, do let me know. I'll answer myself. Okay? So moving on. So on the background for IFRS 17, as you are aware, IFRS 17 is a replacement of IFRS 4. Now, many of you may not probably feel it, but IFRS 4 was the step one, or I would say phase one of this, IFRS standard, where everyone understood that probably IFRS 4, once it starts, it will be easier for everyone else to move from IFRS 4 to IFRS 17. Unfortunately, it took them 25 years to come to IFRS 17. When they talk about IFRS 4 and IFRS 17, I believe the simplest point I would say is that they wanted to try and see what the market feels about a new standard, and then it took them longer to convince everyone else in the market to come to IFRS 17. Still, most of, I would say not most, but many of the insurance companies, the regulators themselves, are still, I would say, not too happy with the standards, to say the least, because we are trying to change something that has happened over, about 150 odd years of accounting and reporting that we will change. So that's one, but there is a need for it, right? That's why we are doing it. Now, what's the need? The need was mostly to understand and see how profitable the insurance operations of each of the insurance companies is. As you know, and probably you would have seen, most of the insurance companies that report numbers today, they have insurance operations and investment operations both. Most of the investments that they do, that is where they earn more money rather than their insurance operations. So in essence, what's happening is that insurance operations have taken a backseat, whereas the investment operations, I would say the investing bit is where the revenue is coming in. This is what probably we have seen, I would say, in the UAE, Bahrain, and probably to an extent in Saudi as well. I suppose in Jordan also something similar, but maybe I'm wrong. So, what IFRS 17 does, as IFRS 4 does, the important bit for all of us to understand is the standard is checking the adequacy of liabilities of each of the insurance companies. If you are adequately covering your liabilities, that's it. And that's, in one sentence, I can explain the full standard. But how you calculate the liabilities, how you present the liabilities, and then how do you manage your liabilities with the business that you write is what is changing with IFRS 17. Most of your accounting currently is normal. You don't do anything out of the ordinary. Under IFRS 17, accounting is going to be at a very granular level. And when I say granular level, I'll come to that. But that granular level requires a lot of data integrity. And when we talk about data integrity and the core systems that are there today, unfortunately, none of the core systems are ready to implement IFRS 17. And that is a true sense of the market at this point of time. And that goes across, be it Oracle, be it SAP, or be it anyone else. They've all tried their hands, but then they've just pulled themselves back. There are for sure companies who have created some systems in place, but then those are mostly the actuarial systems, and with those actuarial systems comes a huge lot of investment that each of the companies need to make. IFRS 17 has not been something where investment is not required, but yes, paying $1 million to the IT vendor is probably the biggest investment that you would ever see. And then looking at the numbers, probably how it can be added as a value to the company is what is missing at this point of time. So from an IFRS 17 background perspective, the most important bit is that now your business is going to get evaluated based on profitability of your insurance contract. Focus on point number 2 on the slides, if you do. So when we talk about profitability, profitability is not only limited to the ultimate loss ratios, right? It depends upon how much commission you are paying and how much general admin expenses you are having, right? Most of the companies that I have worked with, the biggest problem is that we have approximately 30% bare minimum general admin expenses. And that is a bit staggering to an extent, but in our industry that we live in, people are what are very important, right? Your underwriter, your head of underwriting, your head of reinsurance, and naturally they need to be compensated. Our idea should also be to see how we can check those general admin expenses, that is one. But bigger point to check is how much commission that we are paying and what are the ultimate loss ratios. These are the two things that will drive the test of profitability of your contracts. And fortunately or unfortunately, let me tell you this, that most of the companies that I've seen, except for a very few, most of them write pretty big onerous contracts. And when I say onerous, that means loss-making contracts. I'll come to the loss-making bit later, but just to tell you, the background is from IFRS 4 to IFRS 17 is to change and see how profitable your contracts are and account for along. Moving on. So far what we have seen is under IFRS 4, there are a lot of, I would say, methodologies that can be followed, right? Now, the standard setting body decided that that was enough. We are not able to compare apples to apples. So they came up with an idea that there would be 3 methodologies, and all the 3 methodologies are on the screen for you to see. Simply put, I would take the first bit as premium allocation approach. Now, premium allocation approach, or PA as we call it in short, is something similar to what you are doing currently under IFRS 4. So it retains most of IFRS 4 requirements, okay? But it is mostly for short-term contracts. When I say short-term contracts, I mean to say less than 12 months or maximum 12 months contracts. If there are more than 12 months contracts, they have given a leeway and they say that you have to check what are your liabilities under the general model approach, which is the first approach on the screen, and what is your liabilities under the premium allocation approach. If they are not too different, you can still go ahead with the premium allocation approach. Now, the general model approach is something that is, I would say, driven 50% from the actuarial perspective and 50% from an accounting perspective. The biggest requirement from the general model approach is that you need to create cash flows. Cash flows are not only limited to, what are the projected cash flows herein, with regards to your ultimate loss ratios or your claims, but also on your expenses, on your collection. The most important bit under IFRS 17 is collecting your premiums and looking at how you are paying your claims. Okay, so in essence, we are moving from an accrual-based accounting, which everyone has been doing in, to a little bit of cash accounting as well. So you see your cash accounting also taking some important level of, I would say, liability calculation bit coming into that. And this is similar to what your actuaries currently do when they give you the IBNR numbers. Okay. Frankly speaking, cash flows, had it been only limited to that, that would have made all our life easy and happy. But they have added a few extra reserve requirements also under the general model approach and the premium allocation approach both, which we'll talk later. And along with that, they have the requirement has just elaborated in a manner that your financial statements are going to have at least, if not more, 10 additional disclosures. And more importantly, no net accounting. When I say no net accounting, the standard requires you to account for at gross level. So insurance separately, reinsurance separately. That is the second biggest change from IFRS 17 to from IFRS 4 to IFRS 17. Now, gross accounting is not a problem for many, but yes, it's a problem for those who still write more of business while they are relying on the reinsurance to take care of the claims. And that is where your liabilities will show up in the first year itself, when you look at the impact of IFRS 17 adoption. We will talk about that in a few slides more. The variable fee approach that you see here, it is mostly applicable for, I would say, the unit-linked products related to life insurance. It's probably the easier bit. The only thing is you need to take care of, again, the cash flows and calculate how much you are going to pay and receive from the insurance contract. From the variable fee approach, the only thing that I would probably try to highlight is it is in essence nothing but you are just taking a fee out of what you are going to pay to the customer, and that's it. But yes, it also includes your lapses that you need to take care of if there are lapses in your life insurance contracts that you're writing. What are the guarantees that you have put? There are certain guaranteed products as well. So if there are guaranteed products, you need to take care of that when you do the cash flows. And also the mortality rate. Agree? Generally what happens post-COVID that we have seen is that mortality rate tables so far were pretty, simple. Now there is a lot of changes that are happening, and the changes because of agreed COVID, but also because of reinsurers. So the reinsurers have decided that yes, that's fine, we need to look at it. Most likely you would have already noticed over the last 6 months and probably going into the next 6 months, you're going to see your reinsurance rates increasing. And this is one reason for it. Because they will be looking at the companies that they are naturally reinsuring, they will be looking at the solvency ratios of the companies, they will be looking at the impact of adoption of IFRS 17, and they will be also looking at how many onerous contracts are you writing. The more onerous contracts you write, that means you are making more losses. If you make more losses, they have to cover your losses. So they are going to come and they are going to increase your rates automatically. So for insurance companies, it's kind of a double whammy. You are getting hit with reinsurers to increase, which are now likely to increase rates. You have a market where inflation is high, and I'm talking about the general economy at this point of time with the US increasing rates to 4.5%. We understand that inflation will be high. And with inflation high, how much can we increase rates? And in this market, for the local people, we need to understand that. And that is where insurance companies are getting squeezed. A survey, shows, this was a survey from KPMG. When I read the survey, it probably, gave me the same answer, that the survey says that at this point of time, the companies are trying to understand, do they necessarily, survive IFRS 17 or likely merge with someone? Because probably merging might give them economies of scale. Unfortunately, with our current scenario on the companies that we have, there are many small companies, or I would say medium companies, which are surviving quite well. But with IFRS 17, it is going to be a challenge. And that challenge, probably the regulators do understand, and naturally you as an association do also understand that this is going to be a challenge that is not going to last only for 2023. It is a challenge that is progressively going to get enhanced until 24 and probably settle down sometime in 25. And that is where you would see many, I would say, mergers and acquisitions that we have. I think in the UAE market, I can tell you that probably we are looking at bare minimum, at least 5 or 7 mergers and acquisitions happening. 2 have already happened, or rather 3 have already happened. There are another 5 in there at this point of time being discussed and seeking approval from the central bank. So that is where the standard takes you. I think moving on to the changes, I think I mentioned to you about the changes so far. So let's take it one by one. What is the biggest change for every one of us sitting here? The biggest change is that now I need to create groups of contracts. So far we were talking about line of business, right? We never knew or heard about groups. Probably the most that we heard about rather than line of business was the product. Maybe motor comprehensive, motor TPL, marine cargo, marine hull, so on and so forth. Now we are left with an idea of creating groups of contracts. When we say group of contracts, there are three important requirements to create a group. And the standard is very categorically mentioned it. The reason why the standard has been categorically mentioning all this and it has made it as a principle is just to make sure that the comparability within the insurance companies is there. So what are those three important elements to create a group? One is similarity of risk. So for all practical purposes, let's understand that the similarity of risk is motor, we are talking about TPL as a risk, right? So TPL is one risk that you've taken. Let's leave the agency, non-agency bits later. That is even more complicated for it, the data granularity bit. So that's one. That is your similarity of risk. Next, look at cohorts. What is cohort? Cohort is your underwriting year. Now, if you have an underwriting year, say 2021, and you write your business in 2021, that can only be part of one group. You cannot mingle your 2020 or 2022 together in the same group. So 12 months is the differentiating factor. You create your groups within those 12 months. That is where the biggest change comes in. And the third and the most important bit, profitability. If you have profitable contracts, it creates a group. If you have non-profitable contracts, there is a separate group. And now, that is where importantly your implementation methodologies need to be worked out. Generally in the market that we are in, we have seen that onerousness of a contract is worked upon every year. So say if you are to implement IFRS 17 from 2023, you would look at how your motor TPL portfolio has performed in 2021, okay, underwriting year. And we are talking about underwriting years here, no financial year, okay. So if your underwriting year 2021 numbers are profitable, then your accounting for 2022 can be based on that, yes, my TPL portfolio is going to be a profitable contract. However, depending upon the granularity of data, you might be questioned by your auditors and your appointed actuaries. You need to convince them. One, two, you need to also look at if that 1 year is enough to justify the results. So there are companies where we work with who have decided, no, we will not go the 1 year route, we rather look at our last 5 years performance of our, say example, TPL portfolio. And based on that, we come to an average and say that yes, it is profitable or is it loss-making. Again, what we talk about here, especially when it comes to methodologies, there are 3 important people, or rather I would say 4 important people whom we need to convince. One is for sure the management, right? The second part are your appointed actuaries. The third, your auditors. The fourth, your auditors actuaries. And fifth, the central bank or your regulator, right? So whatever methodologies we create and whatever I would say agreements we have with our appointed actuary or our auditors to document it, one, very important, justify it, very important, and then convincing everyone that what you are trying to do is probably the right thing. These are important elements for you as the senior management team and the board of directors or your senior management for various departments to look at. Now, with this huge change that we are talking about, IFRS 17 is not something that only your accounting team can manage. No, it is a standard that is going to change your underwriting, how you write underwriting and do underwriting. It is going to change how the management looks at the KPIs of each of the departments. It is going to change for the internal auditor the processes and probably the changes that are likely to come and how it's being implemented. And similar from a risk management perspective, it is going to further change what are the risks that the company is opening itself up to. So it is not only something that is going to be only for accountants. No, IFRS 17 is a standard that is going to change and require a mentality change from all the departments as well. And that is very important to understand. We cannot blame our accounts and the finance team for pushing so much, but this is something that is being pushed through. So they are not the only one who are going to work on it. It has to be a joint effort from the whole company, if it were to be successful. Moving on to the other changes. As of today, I think there are various options as to how you want to value your IBNRs and OSSR. The standard very clearly says we are looking at best estimates. We don't want prudent assumptions. They are saying prudent assumptions will give you, don't worry about it. What they have done is, once you give a best estimate reserve, they have said, okay, after that now start adding the other reserves that we want you to. And we'll talk about those in a few minutes. So best estimate reserving is something naturally your actuaries would be required to do. And if your actuaries, and I suppose there are many here, understand the best estimate reserves correctly, there should not be any over-providing of reserves in your IBNR numbers in IFRS 17. If you over-provide, then you yourself are putting your foot on the X, because the more you provide, the more IFRS 17 would require. So better to be at best estimate. There's something called risk adjustment that is coming new. Risk adjustment is nothing, simply put, is the standard deviation, I would say, volatility of your claims. Okay. What the standard says is create a risk adjustment reserve, and when you create that risk adjustment reserve, make sure you take volatility into consideration. And that's it. Simple to say, right? But it takes a lot to calculate the numbers. And when we say risk adjustment, there are various methods. You can use the cost of capital method coming out of the Solvency II bit. You can use the MAC chain method to calculate the risk adjustment. Or you might say, no, I'll do it based on the data that is available in my company. Calculate the numbers good, but then there's also something which says that risk adjustment, how are you trying to diversify the risks that you are exposed to also through your business? So there's lots there. It might just say risk adjustment. Risk adjustment is one of those pain points, I would say, which I have seen most of the companies struggle with. And naturally, the struggle is real here because of the limited time and because of very limited knowledge coming out. And especially the standard setting body has tried to give us more details, has tried to give guidance, but unfortunately the guidance is very limited. So it is mostly open to, again, judgments, which they didn't want to do it, but eventually they have opened it up to that. So the next one, we are talking about nowadays, how your P&L will look like, right? Everyone understands gross written premium and stuff. So far, the biggest change for you from a presentation perspective is going to be, there is not going to be any gross written premium anymore. We are talking about something that was there for quite some time. You can still report the numbers of gross written premium, but your accounting is going to just change. I'll just give you an example. Today, the accounting is, if you sell a policy, you create your revenue and you create your receivable or your cash accounting, right? It's very simple. You debit your bank account, credit your GWP for that matter. Under IFRS 17, you debit your bank account, very good, but then you credit what? You credit your liabilities first. So it goes straight away to your liabilities. The name of the account is liability for remaining coverage, LFRC. And LFRC is nothing but your UPR to start with. So under IFRS 17, what's changed? We have moved from income, and then probably at period end we going to the IBNR numbers and booking the IBNR numbers. Now it will be the other way around. You will be booking your IBNR numbers, or I would say the reserve numbers first, and then you will be gradually booking your income. That is also changing. There are more important changes coming in a few more slides. I'll probably take at them. Insurance and reinsurance revenue and expenses have to be presented separately. I think from a presentation perspective, that is one big change that I see. This change for those who mostly rely on reinsurance would probably give it on the face of the P&L itself that what are the things that are changing, and for people to understand the financials probably a bit better. But again, with reinsurance, as you can understand, there are various kinds of reinsurance treaties people have, be it proportionate, non-proportionate, XOL, fact, so on and so forth. This will give people the understanding if your reinsurance arrangements are correct or not also. There are certain companies who might be writing loss-making contracts, but if they have proportionate reinsurance arrangements where most of the loss is taken care of, probably the reader would be happy, or probably the stakeholders would be more happy, including the senior management team or the board of directors or the shareholders for that matter. But there are companies that I've seen who are writing loss-making contracts and sitting on XOL treaties where the XOL does not get triggered. So what happens? You have a policy, you pay a little bit of premium, but still you are not able to get any recoveries from the reinsurance. Those things are going to come, and they are going to be coming up in your P&L itself. So your P&L is not only going to be limited to just reporting numbers, it will also show where you are lacking, and that is something that in my mind I see is one big change that everyone needs to adhere to and probably take corrective action. There is a concept of discounting also, which I think you are aware of. The discounting bit is mostly not only limited to your premium sides, but also to your claims, also to your reinsurance recoveries and your reinsurance premiums. So everything, wherever you have a possibility of delay in payments, be it receiving or be it paying, you would be looking at discounting your amounts. Now, discounting again is going to become a bigger challenge. With the current scenario with the interest rates moving up, there are two options. You can use the locked-in interest rate, or you can use normal interest rates, which can change over a period of time. Mostly to avoid any, I would say, judgment perspective, people have decided that we would stick to the locked-in interest rate. Now, locked-in interest rate is good just to avoid, maybe profitability issues later on, or probably disclosure issues later on. But now understand one thing, that when you write a policy, you need to consider when you are going to receive the amounts as well. So if today you write a policy and you receive the amounts after 9 months, you have lost 9 months of that money, right? You need to discount that. At 5% at the current rate, take the spread of the US dollar to Jordan and you will increase it further. Take the country risk and probably the company risk, you will probably, your discount rates that we're talking about are likely to be in the range of 7.5, 7 to 8%. Now, these are things that needs to be considered and seen. Are you writing profitable contracts? Again, all of this is going to come if your contract is profitable or not. And discounting is also one of those aspects that probably because we are in the cycle where the rates are moving up, that it is coming to probably play a small role. We need to look at that also. We cannot avoid any, is what I understand from IFRS 17, because anything you try to avoid is going to bite you later. Better take the bullet now rather than later, is what I would suggest. And that's what we work on. Based on the consultings that we have done, we have probably stick to the idea of making sure that wherever there is an impact, and being a chartered accountant myself, I understand that if there is an impact, take it on year 1. At least it will hit your equity, not your P&L. And probably gradually your P&L will look better going forward, rather than you trying to avoid the impact in year 1 and then probably taking smaller bits of in the P&L. that is something that I would probably suggest not to. Impact, since it hits your equity, I do understand solvency is an issue sometimes, but take it on the equity, so at least your P&L volatility is simple and probably can be managed. If you just make sure that no, probably this year we want to take less, next year we want to take more, that is not going to help you in the long run. In the long run, that is going to maybe create more problems. This is what I would suggest based on the limited knowledge that I have gained out of IFRS 17 so far. Moving on. This is just, I would say, a small, picture of what IFRS 17 is going to bring to the table. Now, it is not for, as I was mentioning, only limited to the finance team. It is across. If you see actuaries, we start with actuaries first up. You have actuaries in your team. They have been calculating all of this, okay, the cash flows and so on. But calculating cash flows was good. Now calculating cash flows at the group level is what is going to happen. Calculating, discounting, all that is going to happen at the group level. And grouping is something that is going to change and will be your unique ID for accounting. Let's understand that. So today a policy is your ID, right? A unique ID for your booking income and so on. Going forward under IFRS 17, your accounting would mostly be based at your grouping level or at the group level. And that is where most of the data granularity comes into the picture. Unfortunately, some of the companies that I have seen, data granularity is really bad. Simply put, say today you write a policy. The client has committed you for 4 years. That okay, I'll write policy with you for 4 years. It's a 12-month policy, gradually changing year on year, just renewals, right? Sometimes from a data perspective, let me tell you this, the renewal date of the policy is not even there in the data point. It just books the policy and says 4 years, automatic renewal. That is something that is not going to help under IFRS 17. That is going to be more troublesome. When it comes to endorsements, are our endorsements correctly tagged, correctly dated? We need to look at that also. So it's not that your IT team and your finance team can just work on this and finish it off. No. Even your underwriting team needs to understand if the dates are not coming out correctly in the core system, those need to be adjusted. They need to be aligned with the fact that dates need to be properly mentioned. And you should not be booking a policy which is for 12 months on auto renewal for 4 years and put it there in the core system. Okay, I don't need to do anything. Those things are going to, those are some practical issues that I can tell you are already there, and a lot of companies are struggling, let me tell you that. Even today, we are in November, the standard is the standard is going to come into effect from 1st of January 2023, and still people are struggling on the data part. And I do understand that there is some discussion here and also on if we can get additional 6 months or 12 months for the implementation. Unfortunately, in UAE, the central bank has been really categorical. They have said, nothing doing, you have had enough. 3 years is what we gave you. We will not be giving you any further additional time. But yes, in certain places like Oman, Kuwait, they have looked at it, and even for that matter, Bahrain for that matter, they have given some additional time. Maybe your regulators would be kind enough to give you that exemption. I will leave it to the regulators in your discussion. But that is very important, that you be ready. If you are not ready, seek help. If you think that the team which is already working can work on it and probably rectify the situation that you currently are in, I would say think twice. Because these 6 months or whatever the extension you get, or if you don't get, you only have another 3 months left to report your numbers. And your auditors are going to come and ask, what is the likely impact of IFRS 17? We need to report, and that is where I believe Most of the insurance companies have just put it on the back burner, say, yeah, the team is working on it, the team is working on it. And then the team themselves are trying to struggle through it. Hence, the senior management team and naturally the board of directors need to come to the fore, take a decision, and probably guide them and help them. So we finished with actuaries. What about accountants? Again, chart of accounts are going to change, your sub-ledgers, your postings. How does posting change? That is one important bit that probably you would understand and probably the biggest change. Say for example, today you write a policy, whenever the start date of the policy is there, your accounting will automatically change, automatically take care of it, correct? Now, under IFRS 17, say you wrote a policy today, which is 27th of November 2022, right? You wrote a policy today. It is an onerous contract, or it is a group of onerous contracts. Just to tell you, even if the coverage period of the policy starts from 1st of January 2023, which is after the year end, you are expected to create the liabilities today, day zero. That is the biggest change. And this change is going to change not only how you account, how your accounting system does the postings, but also how many business you want to show for this year. Because people, now writing GWPs, right? Okay, I have finished GWP 20 million, 30 million, 40 million, all is good. But if it is an onerous contract, the GWP has no meaning. The GWP creates more liabilities for you rather than the income. That is something that is the biggest change also. Again, when we talk about interfaces, I think core systems have been capable of handling interfaces so far, but now with these new requirements and calculations that are happening, how many new interfaces are going to come through? You need to check that. Are you going to create an ETL layer over which all the data would come through and then the numbers will be calculated? That is probably the only option that I see, because none of the core systems are ready. If the core systems are not ready, someone else has to help you out. And that is where there are many tools that have come in. EY, KPMG, ourselves, we all have our tools. But yes, implementing the tool is also going to be very, very important. And implementing is important, no doubt about it. But looking at the numbers, looking at the methodologies, and then refining the methodologies is also very important. Unfortunately today, let me tell you this with all honesty, except for a few companies, or I would say a few actuaries who are very, very diligently working on IFRS 17, most of them do not meet the required level of expertise, nor do they meet the required level of comfort that they can give. And that is where the problem for the industry stands. From the IT perspective, I took the interfaces first up because I knew that is going to be one challenge. The next challenge is going to be your MIS reporting also. Currently, you can just run a report and say, okay, I'm making this much, that's it, this is the GWP. Now, who is going to tell you how much onerous contracts have you written? How many liabilities you are carrying today on those? What is your likely liabilities from your prospective writing of policies? All that is going to come through. Your MIS is not going to be the simple MIS that you see today. Even your KPIs for your senior management team might need to change. Because if it is only on GWP, we need to for sure look at it, right? Because GWP is not going to be one important element anymore in your financial statements. And when we talk about GWP, most of the, I won't say most, probably a few of the companies, do fronting business a lot. And when you do fronting business, that's good on the, on the number side of it. But yes, if those fronting business starts giving you losses, that is something where you have to take the loss on day zero. Please understand. And that is where your accounting, your underwriting, and your finance team, along with your senior management team, needs to have a decision what to do. Can we still continue with that? These are questions that you need to ask. And when you ask these questions, there would be hard realities coming in. If we don't write our business goals, if our business goes, the competitor gets it. These are questions that you are going to get. But yes, better to discuss those questions today rather than waiting a year after and looking at the impact of the same. Practically speaking, fronting is good. I won't say the expert. We're working with MNCs, they need someone to front it, we do it, good. We need to also look at if the rates make sense to us, if the percentages that you are making on fronting can be increased. Those are things that you need to look at, naturally. These are strategic decisions. So when we talk about IFRS 17, the one important thing that the Central Bank of the UAE and SAMA in the KSA both have very categorically asked, what are the strategic considerations you are making? When you talk about strategic considerations, the strategic considerations are not only limited to who your reinsurance arrangement is going to be or what your reinsurance arrangement is going to be. Your strategic consideration can be that you're not going to write any more motor TPL policies, you'll only write motor comprehensive policies. Or you might decide that your agency business on the motor TPL gives you a lot more claims than the non-agency, so you want to stop your agency bit. You may decide that probably one of the TPAs in the medical is giving you, big numbers. You'd rather change your TPA or probably increase the rates for it. So there is going to be a lot more than what you see, and it can only be achieved if you have data granularity. If I don't have data, I cannot analyze it. If I don't analyze it, I am not in a position to give comfort to my senior management team if the numbers and the decisions that I want them to take can be taken. And that is where your IT team is very, very important. Your data analytics and you reading the data well. Someone who understands data is going to be an important person in your, I would say, steering committee team for IFRS 17 implementation. I think I spoke already about the KPIs. Risk management is also going to be an important element. Which risk you want to take? Is your risk management team taking into account the process changes that are happening at this point of time? Because risk is not only limited to underwriting risk here, right? We are also talking about operational risk. How we are covering the operational risk of all this data flowing to a model, from the model calculating the numbers, then coming back to you, you deciding, and then someone has to audit as well. On that, this process change, is it there, documented? If not, when do you think you will be able to document it? Is your design document ready? Has your design document taken into account all the decisions that you have taken? What are the possibilities, methodologies? All that needs to come and get documented, and naturally your risk management team and your internal auditors need to be convinced also that probably, yes, there is enough justification to take a decision. These are things that are going to simply change the way you work in an insurance company at this point of time, and probably how you present your numbers. It is not only a small shift, it is a tectonic shift from IFRS 4 to IFRS 17, let me tell you that. And this shift is going to take a few of the insurance companies with it, and probably leave the stronger ones who are willing to take strong decisions in the future, and probably take them to a path that can be of beneficial to both the shareholders, the stakeholders, the regulators, and as well as the countries. That's what I see, the challenges, and probably some solutions that probably we've spoken already. We'll speak more. Moving on. That was at the department level, right? Now look at this. What are your organization-wide changes that you anticipate? Policies and procedures needs to be rewritten, has to be rewritten. Performance management of your team, of your underwriting team has to change. data management, the biggest, the most important of everything is your data. How you manage your data, how you get your data out, how you read the data, and how long you need the data to come out to you. Can you do your data analysis based on primary data, or you have to wait for the secondary data to come out? The secondary data, how long does it take for you or your senior management team to get it? Is it 1 month, 2 months, or 3 months? Today you may be writing an onerous contract. Good, no problem with writing contracts. There might be some, not some, maybe a few more which are onerous. But when do you come to know that these are onerous contracts? After 6 months, after 3 months, or after 1 month? This is where your flexibility with data and reading of data is going to bring about a big change. Data is something, let me tell you this, I think we will be covering some portion on the IT security also. So data is important, and for insurance companies, at this point of time, to read data correctly is more important. I already mentioned about the processes. System enhancements, I think system enhancements are required. Unfortunately, none of the core systems are ready. So you will have to do it, I would say, internally to an extent, or probably, wait for the core system vendor to develop it. What I have seen is, except for a few, none are ready. And that is where, most of the companies, I would say, or consultants are taking advantage of the insurance companies. And I'm telling you this, being a consultant myself. The reason being that there are certain aspects where you can't do without, and there are certain aspects where you can. Giving a very rosy picture and telling you, yeah, I can do everything, is not some, it's for sure going to get you into trouble. No one can do completely, over a period of 6 to 8 months. This. So it is a change of the entire company's fabric, I would say, that you are going to get. And this change is not only going to be limited to whatever we've discussed, it's going to change across. You will have to teach your relationship manager or the person sitting in the desk what he needs to do as well. He needs to understand if it is a loss-making contract or a profit-making contract. He needs to be trained to ensure that the correct dates are inputted. He needs to also ensure that when he's writing policies, those policies are written and properly, quickly tagged in into this core system. All that has to come through. You cannot delay recording your policies also. Some of the companies thought about, probably if we are writing on this contract, we'll book it after a certain date. If it is year end, we'll book it after the year end. Those are things that are just maybe possible solutions that you can think of, but then that's not the correct solution at this point of time. So think through this. From a journey perspective, okay, are there any questions? Sorry, I've been speaking quite a lot. Are there any questions for me? Yeah, go ahead.
You were talking about no more GWP.
Yeah.
So what would be the top line in this case? This is my question about basically. And then we are working in a very competitive environment. In Jordan, UAE, even in Saudi Arabia with some regulation. How can IFRS 17 improve the pricing level and of course the technical performance of the company? This is my question number 2. Sorry, I'm a little bit longer. My question number 3, I'm wondering, is IFRS for listed companies or should be only for listed companies? Because at the end of the day, what the IFRS 17 is trying to impose is the transparency, is the accuracy of, let's say, the figures. Why to impose this to small companies? If I take a company, let's say, for example, a country X with $1 or $2, $3 million, let's say, equity, and non-listed company, a family company, is it very important for them to run the IFRS 17? Or It is mainly the transparency or the disclosure is mainly for the listed companies. This is, and question number 4, you were talking about the risk adjustment and the fluctuation. Based on the cost of capital, if you can elaborate on this, because I'm trying to link the cost of capital to the risk adjustment. Sorry, I did not understand. And last question, it will be my last question.
If I miss answering, you have to repeat.
No worries. Taking the impact the first year on equity, you were suggesting to take the impact the first year instead of, let's say, splitting the impact in 3-4 years. But don't you think that it will be very hard, very tough for companies to take one shock? Maybe some companies may disappear over the year. How can you explain? Because today you are talking to professionals. They understand and they can follow. Now, and they put my place in GM or CEO place, for example, trying to explain this to your board of directors. They never heard about the IFRS 17, and you are telling them, we will take the impact 20% of your equity will disappear. Do you think that this is realistic or feasible? Thank you very much. I have been so long.
Thank you. All your questions are very, very relevant. Let me tell you that. So thank you for asking that. Probably most of the people are thinking about it. You've already dotted the list them and asking. So let me take the questions probably one by one. The first one, probably the equity one, is probably more important for everyone. You know, this is, I wouldn't say that is from a consultancy. My view is pretty simple. I have seen the impact of IFRS 9 on financial instruments, okay, when it came in 2008, 2009. You know, remember IFRS 9, right? In 2000, okay, let's put IFRS 9 first up and let's talk to 2008, 2009. You remember, everyone remembers the Lehman crisis and the losses that it gave to most of us, right? I have seen banks disappear like this. When I say banks, the smaller banks, right? And they did. My view is very simple when I say that you should think of taking the hit in equity and probably not splitting it across the years. See, when you have calculated the liability, that liability has to be taken on that very period or on that very date. That is important for all of us to understand. That is the correct thing to do. If we say that, okay, my liability is $1 million, but I want to take only 250 this year, maybe I'll split it over 250 over the next 3 years. That might be something, I would say, ethically wrong. One, that is there. But two, you are just then trying to avoid and give the correct picture to the senior management team or to the board for that matter. So my suggestion is more from one, ethical, and two, also from ensuring, if I as a general manager of an insurance company go and tell my board that, okay, this is the impact of IFRS 17, $1 million dirhams or $1 million dinars for that matter. It's too much, it's about 20%, right? Now what can we do for it? Let me tell you this, when we all are in the same boat, be it company X, Y, Z, the central bank also understands, your regulators also understand that yes, IFRS 17 adoption is going to give an impact. Now, if you ask me, if I take a loss, he takes a loss, and you don't take a loss or an impact on the equity, probably the regulator will ask you for a few questions for sure. Yeah. The next and more importantly, we both are on probably similar lines at this point of time. If you are also with us, we all can go to the regulator and say, okay, we understand with the impact of adoption of IFRS 17, our solvencies are looking really bad, but give us time, we cannot do without it. Regulator will also understand, he'll be more considerate with all of you together. If we try to avoid it, then you are the lone guy who is trying to avoid the impact in that sense. That is why my suggestion is to stick to equity, take the hit which is necessary. I'm not telling everyone that, okay, take a hit of a 2 million dirhams. No. Take the hit that is expected and required. Once you take that, and naturally I do understand the equities are likely to fall between 10 to 20% wherever it can be, you will be in a position to at least present yourself, not only to your regulator, but also to your shareholders. Not only to your shareholders who are probably closely held shareholders, but also to the general shareholders where your companies are listed and they are traded.
It can be perceived like if you were cheating before, if you take the 20%. No, this is a very serious issue.
Trying to explain to the shareholders that you are losing 20% of your equity is crazy. I can imagine, in the newspaper, especially in a country like Jordan, you will have tens of articles telling you that you were cheating over the years. I don't think that what you are suggesting is very realistic. Honestly speaking, I'm talking from a practical point of view.
No, sir, I understand.
Not from ethically, I disagree with you. I'm sorry to disagree with you.
No problem.
I don't consider it as unethical, honestly speaking.
So one thing, and let me just tell you, the shareholders will for sure ask questions, be it 5%, 10%, or 15 or 20. Let's be very clear about that. One. Two, if shareholders think that you are or you were making losses and that is now coming to the level with IFRS 17, for sure they will understand. But then, they cannot, I would say, blame you for those losses because you were already following certain regulations that were in place. Now the regulations have probably become more tougher. When your solvency requirements change, say today the regulator is very, conveniently telling you that these are the 5 points that you need to cater to for your solvency requirements. Tomorrow they come and they include one more point in it. Now the shareholders cannot say that no, you were cheating as before. The shareholders are going to probably tell, you have to tell the shareholders that there were these 5 points and that is where we fall. I understand where you are coming from, but that's my view. Sorry for that. But my view is probably limited to the understanding, and I understand practically it may be very difficult. That is why you will see many mergers and acquisitions. That is already happening across the globe. I see you are not satisfied yet with the answer.
Thank you very much. No. It's okay for me. Really, it is a wonderful presentation. Believe me. To the contrary, because I'm enjoying your presentation, that's why I'm asking.
I'm happy with it. Okay, so I've answered only one of your questions. Let's move to the second one. GWP. So when I say that there will be no GWP, I'm not saying that you stop reporting your GWP numbers. No. What's going to happen is your insurance service revenue, you will see in the later slides, I have put that through, that your P&L is going to start with a line item which would say insurance service revenue. It will not start with GWP. GWP is something that if you want, you can put it in your director's report or your report and say, okay, we wrote this much GWP and this year this is this much. That's it. On your P&L, there is no GWP anymore. And that is the standard disclosure requirement. You can't change that. If you want to change it, probably, naturally your auditors would probably give you the way. Again, the important number to look at is the insurance service revenue. That's the number that everyone wants to look at. That's the second question answered. If I remember the third one, what was it? Can you please help me with the third one, please?
I was asking if IFRS 17 should be applicable to listed companies.
Yeah, yes. So, now, this is a good question. That should IFRS 17 be only applicable to insurance companies which are listed and not to the smaller ones? And we leave the smaller ones to follow IFRS 4. I think in this part of the world, we have generally a federal law which says that most of our financial statements have to follow IFRS or IOP standards when the auditors issue their opinion. And most of the companies in UAE also thought the same way and probably asked the question to the central bank. The central bank very clearly mentioned to them that please follow federal law number 6 and that's it. The federal law number 6 very clearly says your financial statements have to adhere to IFRSs. That's it, and stops there. So in this sense, what I see, if there is no federal law requirement perspective, probably the regulator might be interested, but having seen the communication from the regulators of Saudi Arabia, UAE, Bahrain, and even for that matter Oman, it is going to be something that is going to be applicable. And as you say, it is going to be more taxing for those smaller companies which were quietly surviving the business. But standard is a standard and they will have to comply with it. Third one answered. Sir, fourth one?
I was asking about the risk adjustment and the cost of capital.
Yes.
You know, the link between the two, because I did not understand honestly, the link
Okay,
you were
great.
making.
So I think all of you are aware of the solvency requirements in the European Union, right? Now, in the European Union, in the solvency requirements, they also calculate the cost of capital, right? Now, in UAE, they also try to give a number through the e-forms that are quarterly submitted to the central bank, the risk percentages. Okay, these are percentages based on claims and the earned premiums. Just simply put it. So, for some of the companies, if you look at it, the capital requirements itself, some of the actuaries, and this is from an actuarial perspective, I'm not an actuary, let me tell you, this is a disclaimer for all of you now. I'm not an actuary, I'm an accountant. So some of the actuaries have calculated the risk adjustment to the cost of capital, because what has happened is that cost of capital gives you the reserving numbers that are currently there, and also the capital that is required. And that is where they have tried to calculate the cost through the cost of capital details or data that are there from the European Union to come up. This is just, I would say, maybe 5 to 10% of the companies which are following it, and mostly life insurance companies that are following. Others are taking their own data, calculating the risk adjustment based on the chain element that we have seen. So that is one thing. This risk adjustment from the cost of capital was mostly, I would say, in the first dry run or in the first financial impact assessments that were done. So that is where they followed it. Otherwise, what I have seen now is most of the companies are following the data part from themselves and probably guidance from the regulators to calculate the risk adjustments. Okay, sir?
There is one question remaining.
Okay, one remaining. Yeah, go ahead.
The IFRS 17 and the pricing. Because you were saying that the IFRS 17 will improve the pricing. And we are coming from...
Will not improve the pricing, sir. IFRS 17 will probably increase your expenses because your reinsurance pricing is going to increase. If your reinsurance pricing increases, you add your expenses on top of it. You need to increase your rates also, correct, to make the profit? Unfortunately, in this current scenario that we are in, that's a tough one with inflation so high. So what I was telling was that your reinsurers have to be aligned to two things. That your losses are not because of anything extraordinary, it's because of IFRS 17. So hold on to your horses, don't increase the rates, my reinsurers, your Swiss Re or others that you have. Two, if you increase the rates, probably give us some level so we can increase maybe 5-7%. Don't increase the rates staggeringly. Unfortunately, with COVID, rates, especially for medical, are very, very high at this point of time from reinsurers. I think probably someone who writes medical would know this. Even for others, especially marine and cargo, the rates have been a bit higher, is what I see. From a pricing perspective, insurance companies are squeezed, is what I mentioned. And the squeeze is because the reinsurers wants to increase the rates, the client doesn't want to pay as much. So you leave and you are stuck with probably a lower profitable numbers. And that is where you need to efficiently write good business 2, take maybe risks which you can manage, and 3, reduce your expenses to an extent. That is probably the scenarios that you are left with. Thank you. So from a IFRS 17 journey perspective, I think most of you have already gone through it. I don't want to spend much time here. The only important thing is make sure that your methodology documentation is there and your design document is correctly available for review. And you at least have, and I'm telling you with all honesty, you at least have a review from a third party who is not implementing the IFRS for you. Because that is where you will get good and probably some suitable, I would say, questions and answers. Because getting into an industry where you have many players is good, and then getting the knowledge from different countries can also be a good starting point and probably validation of the things that you have done. So that is something that I would say you need to look at. I think what I understand is most of you have already finished your gap assessment, your financial impact assessments, and are now working on parallel run. So be it, if you are already on parallel run, I think just from what I've heard and seen in the regulators at the UAE and Saudi Arabia, most of the companies expect you to be on parallel run for at least, if not more, 2 years. So you will be reporting your IFRS 4 and IFRS 17. Yes, sir.
I have two questions. One, does this IFRS cover asset management as well, concerned to the insurance company? That is one. Second, the insurance companies are required to make a group of contracts. So this, the insurance industry, you heard me? Yeah. The insurance industry has a lot of insurance fees. So now the group of contracts are already known to everybody, or every insurance company has the choice to select which contract or which policy can be put under certain group of contracts. Thank you.
Okay, great. So to answer the first question, as I was mentioning earlier, insurance operations are only what IFRS 17 is concerned about. It does not concern the asset management bit. Okay? If your question was correct, I understood that is it insurance contracts also take care of the asset management bit?
Oh, I mean, the insurance company might have also in its business some assets.
Management.
Yeah, assets management. So now, does it cover? Got it. Yeah, that is the first one.
So so just let me answer that. So if it is your IFRS, if you are issuing an insurance contract under which you are giving the option of generally, I would say, the unit-linked investment policies that you issue for long-term life insurance contracts, if that is the case, then it falls under IFRS 17. If you are writing your insurance contracts separately and you have an asset management business that is continuous on the other side, you don't need to apply IFRS 17. IFRS 9 applies to you there, not IFRS 17. Okay. And the second one was with regards to the groups of contracts.
Groups.
Yes. So when it comes to groups, as I mentioned, there are 3 important things that you need to look at. The grouping of contracts is based on the product, on the underwriting year, and the profitability. Now, For different companies, this will be different. Some companies might decide that I will create groups at quarterly level also. So that is something that is open to you. But what the standard very clearly says is you cannot mingle the groups together. You cannot write motor TPL and then say, okay, these marine policy is also part of the same group. That is not allowed. But the other judgments is all with you. As a company, when you do your design document and your methodology document, that is where you will have to explain what are the groups that you have created and what are the products that have come under that. Okay? Yeah, go ahead.
Does it now the new IFRS 17 replace totally the annual financial loss and profit statements? And from the 1st of 2023?
So from 1st of January 2023, you have to report under IFRS 17. That is given. That is not changing until your regulator decides to give you an exemption. And that is applicable for all the insurance companies.
But you still have to maintain profit and loss statements at the end of the year separately.
Yes, you will be.
No.
So see, I'll give you an example. So today you are reporting under IFRS 4, correct? Now, tomorrow, from 1st of January, IFRS 17 kicks in. Still, the regulators have requested for parallel run. When I say parallel run, you will continue to do what you are doing today. You will plus do this IFRS 17 also. In essence, the regulators also wants to see what are the changes that you are reporting under IFRS 4 and 17 together. So that is where in Saudi Arabia, in UAE, even for that matter in Bahrain, the regulatory solvencies that you are reporting already today, you will continue as it is, and your IFRS 17 equity statements and all will also be reported together. So you are reporting your parallel, and that is why your regulator is going to take a discussion probably with the company as to how your solvency is or how your equity is reducing or decreasing. Sir, this point probably I missed when I answered you. So just to tell you, on UAE, the central bank has said you report your solvency under IFRS 4 for the next 12 months minimum. And you continue reporting your financial statements under IFRS 17. They want to see what is the impact. And then probably.
You were talking about three criteria. You were mentioning three criteria.
Yes.
For example, if we are coming to, we are talking grouping. Now, you have the line of business.
Yeah.
You have the risk of the quality.
Yeah.
Third criteria, we're talking about the expected performance of the risk. Look, I'm asking very naive question. I'm not a director jury. I've been a director jury for a few months. But how can I assess in advance a client, let's say a walking customer coming to me? How can I give this client, I'm talking for example on TPA only, I'm not talking about how can I give this client a score? And this client is going to give me, let's say, 150% loss ratio or 5,000 loss ratio or 0 loss ratio.
I got
then the problem with the grouping, the quality of the risk, I think it's not that easy. Even if we are talking property today, if we are talking engineering or we are talking, let's say, large risk, it will not be easy really to qualify or to decide in advance, let's say, the expected performance of the risk. Unless if it is based on past performance or let's say, triangulation.
You answered the question yourself. It has to be based on past performance. So I'll give you an example, and probably that will help you to understand. As I was mentioning earlier, so some of the companies have said we look at the last year performance of our portfolio and determine if it is an onerous or a profitable contract, right? Some companies have decided, no, I will not look at last year contracts, I will look at the last 4 years performance of this line of business or this product, and then I'll see what my onerousness or non-onerousness is. Some companies have also documented it in a manner, sir, that I understand that this is a loss-making contract, but I have taken steps to ensure that it no longer is. So I'll give you an example here through TPL again. So TPL you're writing, we see that the last 4 years performance has been 103, 104%, right? Now, the company has decided, okay, we understand that our portfolio is loss-making, no doubt about it, but we've increased our rate by 10%, just to make sure that we are no longer loss-making. That can be a decision point for you. If you have taken corrective action, which can be substantiated by evidence, you can say, even if my TPL portfolio was loss-making in the previous year, I am going to continue and categorize it as a profitable contract going forward for the next year. So that is something that is also available. You have to take corrective action and in line with the expectations. Yeah. Okay, moving on. We have approximately 35 minutes left. Yeah. Let me know when I have 5. Okay, so I think most of you have already done this. Impact assessment, design, and then the implementation. The important bit again stands for all of you, data. If you don't have data, you can't do any of it. And that is where you need to look at it and analyze yourself. Have you been doing it? Have you fine-tuned your design, that document that you created? Have you looked at other variabilities that are in place which can lead to a different decision? That is very important. You need to see that. And that is where your steering committee, or I would say the project coordinator, from the finance side or from the actuarial side, comes into picture and tells you probably the correct action. These are the things that are, I would say, from a journey perspective for IFRS 17 is very important for all of us to take in. I'm not getting into the details of what you would have done in the gap assessment. I think that you would have already done, right? More importantly is the design phase, okay? In the design phase is where you build your proof of concept, where you see what are the tools that you require, where you see what is going to be your target operating model. Not only see, but document. Not only document, but to also see what are the results flowing from it. Because at the design level is where you're going to take most of your decisions. And when you take these decisions, you need to see what is the impact of each such decision. And that is where a quantitative impact assessment and also qualitative impact assessment becomes necessary. Most of the companies in the Gulf, I would say, especially in UAE and Saudi, they have done 2 financial impact assessments bare minimum. Some have done 3 also, and reported those to the regulators. So the regulators also understand that on an overall basis, what is the likely impact? And that is where, sir, your question comes in, and probably yours as well, that the regulators knows that, okay, company X has shown me 3 million, 2 million and 3 million. Approximately I'm looking at an impact of 3 to 4 million. And when they talk to you, probably they talk to you in that manner. Mr. Rafat is here, he will be speaking about that in some bit. These are things that regulators also understand. It's a very tough one for you. And they also want to safeguard the insurance industry. It is in no one's interest that the insurance industry is not performing or is not doing well. Because one of the pillars of any economy is naturally, first is the banks that are there, second is always the insurance companies. We are financial sector, right? The financial sector safeguarding and ensuring is in the current path, or the correct path, is very important for the regulators as well as for the economy. And that is where the regulator's role also comes in. I suppose you will hear from him on that. From an impact analysis perspective, as I was mentioning, groups is one, granularity of calculation is the next, and probably more importantly is getting your liabilities up and running. At this point of time, so far, whatever we have discussed, I have not even gone into the details of how you calculate the liabilities, and we've got 35 minutes only. So you need to understand the weight that the standard carries. And this is 35 minutes after, looking at approximately 2 hours that we'll be on this. So it is pretty strong, I would say, a standard that we need to look at. I think implementation is nothing but implementation is just making sure whatever decisions you have taken are coming out correctly or not. If not, change it. So it's just a copy paste of what we've done in the design bit, mostly. Here comes the important bit, and probably the most important bit. These are approximately 12 methodologies that are likely to give you an important view of what IFRS 17 is going to be. Okay? Before this, I'll just quickly take you to the grouping, because I think grouping is something which people have to understand before we go there. So this is an example. If you see today, we are generally accounting for at the line of business level on the top. You see LOB, which is line of business. For this example, it is motor. Going forward, your accounting will be at this level. 3 levels down. You will be 3 levels down. And this 3 levels is where your granularity of data comes in. So you are not only going to look at line of business, not the product, you are also going to look at the portfolio. If it is more than 12 months, less than 12 months, the underwriting bit that I was telling you, 12 months apart. So 2021, 2020, for example.
Has been always 12 months. Has been never over 12 months.
It is only for TPL, for example, I'm saying, right?
Not even for the comprehensive motor policy is always 12 months. I never seen, in my life, any motor policy exceeding 12 months. It has no sense to have a motor policy. You can have a contract with, let's say, a car dealer or something like this for more than 12 months, but a policy cannot exceed 12 months. This is as per my experience. I have been for 3 decades in the.
Sure, sir.
But I think the split between over 12 and less than 12, I don't think it is something consistent.
So just to give you an example, in UAE, motor insurance policies are for
13 months.
So and there is a reason to it also, because they want to cover the risk for maybe additional period of time. Now, when we say that it is more than 12 months or less than 12 months, it is just a simple way of putting it. And it is not only for motor TPL, because motor TPL, motor is something that everyone understands, so the motor TPL is the example. This can be for your marine, or for that matter, can be for your engineering business also, maybe for your construction, maybe for the liability. It depends what you take in, right? What we're trying to tell you is that you are moving from line of business to the grouping. And the grouping is based on these 3 steps. Your underwriting here, your profitability, and your portfolio choice or the product for that matter. And this is where...
I'm not criticizing, by the way.
No, I understand, sir. I understand. I'm not saying that. I'm just trying to explain that. Yeah.
If you allow me to add something, for example, here, if you are doing the grouping for motor, you can add something which is very easy. For example, high value car over 500, high value car over 500,000 dirhams, for example, or and you can see, you can go if you want to do a pure segmentation, you can go into the details, which is not difficult for them to do, and then you can see your performance depending on the cars or high value or medium value or even, let's say, average value. This is can be done easily. In this case, the grouping can be done easily.
Totally agree.
It was only questioning, the 12 or over 12 years. 12 months.
Sir, I am with you on that, and I agree with you. Some of our clients have not done motor as TPL and comprehensive. They have done motor commercial and personal also. Some of our clients have said we will not segregate motor comprehensive TPL. We will segregate it motor agency, non-agency.
The motor comprehensive and TPA is the basic distinction in insurance.
Yes.
Since the moment when I was student, studying insurance, it has been always because motor comprehensive is completely different than TPA. Because TPA has been always a making loss line of business, while the comprehensive is the most profitable business.
And that is where, now this is where there is judgment, right? So some companies have said, we issue one policy to one client. Now that policy includes motor. More than 5 years, motor automatically fall into TPL. The others can fall into comprehensive or TPL, whatever they take. So we are not merging, we are merging both and putting it. So what it does is, it adds that profit to the TPL and probably saves them the losses. That is one thing that has happened. If you understand where I'm coming from honoracity perspective. So things are there, and again, it is just an example. You can do it in as many different ways as you possibly can, right? I'm not here to probably guide you on that. I'm just trying to tell you that this is how your groupings are likely to be. In the groupings, when we talk about, if you remember, we spoke about, how your postings are going to change. So take this example. So we have a motor comprehensive 2019 underwriting year, 13 months policy, which is a loss making, right? And your issue date is 31st 12/2018. Okay. However, your effective date or coverage period starts from 1st of January 2019. As I was mentioning, you will have to book your reserves as at 31st December itself. You cannot wait for the coverage period time. If you can't wait for the coverage period time, what does it mean? It means this, that you have no revenue on that contract. You have only got the cash probably, maybe some receivables which are sitting outside, and you're booking all the liabilities on you. Think from that perspective. Plus, add to it, if it is a receivable, you will be taking an IFRS 9 expected credit loss model provisioning on that also. That is where things are going to change. And when I say IFRS 9, please be mindful of the fact that IFRS 9 impact has to also be considered when you are doing your IFRS 17 impact. So any receivables in your book on day 1 has to be considered, that what is the probability of default, the loss given default, the expectation of how that loss can happen based on the macroeconomic variables of the country and the macroeconomic scenarios that you build, and then you calculate your models on IFRS 9. So we are no longer accountants now, right? We are now statisticians. Probably it's much easier where the days of accounting, no longer. Now you are moving to a place where you need to understand statistics, you need to understand actuarial, you need to understand probably a lot more than ideally people would. That is where we are moving on. Look at the other one, which is the motor comprehensive loss making, only 6 months contract. Generally 6 months contracts are not issued. I'm just giving you as an example. If it's a loss making, again issued on the same date, which is 31/12/2018, and if the effective date is 1st of April 2019, still today you will have to book the loss. Very important for all of us to understand. In the next one, if it is profitable and you write on November, now can you take the profit today? The answer is no. Wait until the coverage period starts. So you have to wait until 1st of April 2019 to start booking your earned premium. These are things that are going to change in your grouping, and this is not easy. It adds a lot of, I would say, color to how you want to account, how you want to post, and then how you want to present. All comes through. Okay, coming to the methodologies. So grouping, I think I have explained. If there are any questions on grouping, do raise it. Maybe we are limited on time, so maybe I'll take the questions in the break time if you possibly can, or probably later in the evening if there is some time available. On the methodologies front, there are these 12 items 16 items that you see. The red ones are very complex, I would say. When we talk about CSM, which is contractual service margin, we are talking about profitability of contracts. So the requirement from the standard is that, okay, till under IFRS 4 you don't care about profitability of contracts. It will automatically come in the P&L, right? No. Under IFRS 17, calculate it. Look at what your cash flows are, inflow, outflow, calculate it. Based on the calculation, create the liability and then recover the amount slowly to P&L. That's one important change. How you change and how you book your CSM over a period of time, if it is especially long-term contracts, is very, I would say, complex. You need to calculate your cash flows. You need to make sure that your amortization of CSM is based on the cash flows, and if the cash flows change, what impacts? So say today, I'll just give you a simple example, I don't want to make it more complicated. Say today you book a policy, you calculate, okay, my CSM is based on this cash flow and my profitability is say $10 over a period of 2 years. So every quarter you're going to book how much? 2.5, 2.5, 2.5, right? For this year, and in the next year you will book another 2.5, 2.5, 2.5. Say after the first quarter, the cash flows change. What would you do? So you need to take into account that, rework your CSM numbers, and then give the impact on it. So the CSM release or CSM, I would say booking on the P&L is not going to be very smooth. It is going to be based on your cash flows. Make sure your cash flows are watertight. If not watertight, probably considers every aspect of IFRS 17. That's CSM. I think cash flows is the base thing. You have to have cash flows for everything that you do. Simple. I would say that and stop it there. That is your first base thing based on which your numbers are going to get calculated. So cash flows is the most important bit here. And when I say cash flows, it's not only limited to cash flows from premiums. I have already earlier mentioned, they will also look at the triangles that you have, which tells what are your claim patterns, how you are paying your claims, what is your receivables, what is the recoveries on the receivables over a certain period of time. All that need to be considered for your cash flows. So cash flows is the base for IFRS 17, let me tell you that. That's my understanding in a simplistic way. Analysis of movement is just nothing but, it's like the equity statement, I would say. You start with opening balance of liability and then you come to closing balance of liability. In essence, that disclosure of analysis of movement tells everyone what the company has done during the whole year. And that includes the release of CSM, booking of reserves on onerousness, and so on and so forth. Everything. That is one of the biggest disclosure requirements of IFRS 17. And especially for longer term contracts, that is something that is going to be a pain for everyone to calculate and create until you have a tool or your core system is capable. Let me tell you that. Risk adjustment, I think we've already discussed. There are many methodologies. Whichever methodology you choose, please make sure you have thought through it, understood the impact of it, and then taken the necessary decision. I think premium allocation approach is more similar to IFRS 4, that's why it's not as complex. I would just take the discount rate bit, which I was just talking to you how to calculate the discount rate. The discount rate should take into consideration the country risk, the spread of the currency that you are writing your business in, and also naturally because we are dependent on dollar sometimes, look at the dollar rate also as a base. This is the practical bit of it. Otherwise, you can take whatever discount rate your central bank provides and say, yeah, the central bank provides discount rate. But you need to also make sure that you're writing on which currency. If it is only the Jordanian dinar, it's fine. If you're writing some policies in dollar, there need to be something that needs to change. If you're writing in some other currencies, those need to be taken care of when you are doing your discount rate calculations. Transitional CSM is when you transit to IFRS 17, what is your profitability that is there in the liabilities that you carry? Pretty complex, to say the least. For transition, there are three methods that have been given. The modified retrospective, the fair value, and the retrospective. I think practically speaking, retrospective no one is doing because it's impossible to do. Modified retro or the fair value is what people are doing. When you do the modified or the fair value, just take into consideration that whatever the numbers do give it, you have done a sense check of it. Transitionally, the numbers may, as we all understand, is not going to be CSM for most of the companies, it's going to be an impact. So, but there might be some group of contracts which might have transitional CSM. So those split and then presenting is what you need to look at. Pretty complex, let me tell you that. And it is something that you would need a lot of time and effort from your actuaries and your finance team to work on. Actually, data key. Data is the key for IFRS. Okay, now I think I am in my last few slides, I would say. If you are getting bored, do let me know, I'll stop. Nor we will stop for the lunch for the break at 12. Okay, so how do you value your liabilities, right? How do you calculate your liabilities? Under IFRS 17, as I was mentioning earlier, now there is no UPR. Unexpired premium reserve is something that you now have to forget. There is a new terminology which is called liability for remaining coverage. It just is like the American way of saying UPR is a liability, we all know, right? And that is for a period that is still not there, it's not expired. Now they've just changed it, liability for remaining coverage. Simple. It is the same thing, but a broader perspective to it. So liability for remaining coverage is based on, again, the present value of your future cash flows, your risk adjustments, your unearned profit, and one more important element again, also looking at how your reinsurance numbers do stack up, how your recoveries do stack up, understanding how your LFRCs can be challenged, all that needs to be considered. This is under the general model approach. So what I'm giving you here is the liabilities, how they are calculated under the general model approach and the premium allocation approach. So under the general model approach, the LFRC is calculated based on cash flows, risk adjustment, and unearned profit or CSM. Under premium allocation approach, you can follow the UPR approach that you have. However, if you believe that there is a likelihood of the contract going onerous, always keep your base model as a GMM. You can always do your IFRS 4 or the PAR approach. So for all our clients, what we have told them is that our cash flows have to be there for all products. We don't care if it is onerous or not, because we don't know. Tomorrow you will go, as a consultant you will leave, right? And the company will be sitting with it. So if it becomes onerous later on, we need to be prepared for it. One. Two, we need to anyhow make sure that the PAR requirements of PAR eligibility meets for the less than 12 or the more than 12 months contract. So it's always better to have your cash flows at granular level for all your products. If your consultant says no, it's less than 12 months, Kalibali, no, you don't need your cash flows, don't do that. I would suggest make sure that you have the cash flows in place. Liability for incurred claims is probably a bit, I wouldn't say bit, but it's same for both under the PAR as well as under GMM, under even today your IFRS 4. The only thing that has come up new is the risk adjustment. As I was mentioning, risk adjustment is the volatility of the claims that you pay. When I say volatility, it can be what losses you booked on day one when you on the loss date or when the reported loss was reported, and how much you paid, or how much you are carrying then, and later on how much you have paid. Similar. So it all depends upon your loss date, your outstandings, and how much you have paid. Looking at it, analyzing those through the MaxSale method, and then calculating your risk adjustment numbers. This is in a sense how the liabilities are going to get calculated. This is the difference on IFRS 4 and IFRS 17. So I have used the same terminologies of IFRS 4 just to make sure that you are also on the same page. So if you see, your UPR remains same. Your deferred acquisition cost, which we have not spoken yet, is there in both. Only earlier there was something called the premium deficiency reserve or the unexpired risk reserve or URR, which is now called the loss component. Now, in most of the companies which write short-term policies, they just expense all the commission. In some, they say no, we will amortize it over a period of time. The standard requirement is simple. They say it's up to you. If it is within 12 months, up to you. More than 12 months, amortize it over a period of time. You cannot, expense it. So if you see, under IFRS 4, under IFRS 17, under the premium allocation approach, everything mostly is the same. Nothing is changing except for the risk adjustment and naturally the discounting bit. Come to IFRS, GMM I don't have, but let me tell you what is in GMM. On GMM, deferred acquisition cost is something that is there, which you have to consider. You cannot expense all your commission, or you should not. If you do, it's up to you, but then there is a likely impact that comes through. And overall, GMM, whatever be the numbers, your adequacy of liabilities is what you are calculating, remember this. And whenever we talk about adequacies of liabilities, be it a regulator, be it a shareholder, be it your own senior management team, you need to make sure the regulator wants to understand, are you capable of paying your liabilities when they come to you? Example can be, certain companies, I wouldn't take the names, but you would have, seen the after effects of 2008 crisis, where there were certain insurance companies which were not able to pay the claims when they came. There were also certain companies out of the Beirut blast that happened where they were not able to pay the claims. So there are, these things that the regulator has also looked at. And that is where, if you understand, we are moving from an accrual accounting to a cash accounting, or to understand how much cash you are collecting or how much time you are taking to collect the cash. If you don't have the cash, are you going to pay the liabilities? You will not be able to. I can write $1 trillion of business, but I am not receiving the cash. Do I have the money to pay my liabilities? No. And that is what the standard requires, that you need to look at if the liabilities that you carry are adequately, I would say, funded through the cash that you carry also. In essence, that's the gist of whatever we do under IFRS 4 or IFRS 17. Moving on to the impact, I think we've discussed quite a bit. So from an impact perspective, just look at this as probably, I would say, a small, executive summary. So your level of aggregation, I spoke about the line of business, it has to change, right? So that's the level of aggregation changes. Your cash flows need to be calculated, which were earlier not there under IFRS 4. Your discount rates were not being used or very little used under IFRS 4 reserving. They need to come in, and the impact is going to be high. Risk adjustment was never evaluated under IFRS 4. It is getting evaluated now. CSM, there was no estimation of CSM itself, right? Now you have to estimate your CSM. The premium allocation approach, there was no approach even defined under IFRS 4. So hence the premium allocation approach being probably somewhat similar to IFRS 4 is what probably we've tried to analyze here. Underwriting, more and the most important. Onerosity was never considered. Today you have to consider onerosity of contracts. And once you consider it, that is where practical challenges start coming in. Do you consider only the ULR, which is the ultimate loss ratio? Or do you consider the risk adjustments along with it? Or do you also consider the general admin expenses that you're bearing? Or you also consider the commission expense that you're paying? So there are 4 expenses that you need to look at. Practically speaking, onerosity definition has been quite a bit discussed. I would say your ultimate loss ratios and the commission that you pay are there for you to look at the loss component that you book for future years. But to take a decision on onerosity, you need to consider all the 4 expenses. Reinsurance, I spoke, all reinsurance contracts are more than 12 months. Okay, we all understand. It is for a period of 12 months, but the coverage period is probably, if you write a policy on the last day of the reinsurance also, it will cover it for another 12 months, right? So it's probably longer. And reinsurance has to be considered at gross level, no net. So that is where you may also need to consider recoveries from reinsurance of the loss component that you book. If you have today an onerous contract and you have booked a loss component of $1 million dirhams or a dinar, you need to consider, if of this 1 million dinar, how much can I recover from the reinsurer? That calculation has to be done. Just to tell you, once you calculate that number, then I would tell you, okay, if you are saying future recoveries from reinsurance and you are booking them, also book the IFRS 9 loss on it, which you have not even considered, right? So you will have to look at the IFRS 9. There is something called ENID, events not in default. That is also a new risk for which you need to create a reserve. It's not on the slide, sorry for that, but based on my practical experience, just wanted to share it with you. So even it's not in data is nothing but the tail risk of the data not coming into the reserve bit that needs to be considered. Similarly, there are these reserves that are being spoken about, and especially for takaful companies. I do understand there are only 3 takaful companies in Jordan that are looking at. For takaful companies, especially, segregating the policyholder business with the shareholder business, the cash flows for the both, how much wakala fees you are charging. Is it leading to onerosity on the shareholders or on the policyholders? There is lot more complex than the normal business, or I would say the normal conventional business. And just to give you a simple example, a group of contract which is loss making for the policyholder can be a profitable group for a shareholder. Think from that perspective.
It is always profitable for the shareholder because there is a wakala fee, especially in the wakala model. It is always profitable.
Agreed. But sometimes what happens is, and this is in the market, sometimes now people have started paying commission more than 30 or 35%. If you pay that, then it becomes loss making. That is one. Two, and probably to give a perspective here again.
The commission is on the policyholder side, not on the shareholder side.
But
from an accounting point of view, it's on the policyholder, not on the shareholder.
But
because the wakala is not supposed to cover the commission. Everything technical should be on the policyholder side. That's what you are covering when you are paying. In fact, you are paying the management fees to the shareholders.
But in certain aspects, sir, the commission is being paid by the shareholders in UAE for that matter.
In certain companies, but this is in my opinion, this is something which is wrong, even from a technical point of view, because when you are talking about a policyholder fund should be inclusive of everything related to
the insurance operations. Fair, agreed. I'm with you on that. Just to tell you, surplus distribution, no one even has considered it in an IFRS 17. I will tell you this. I have a takaful company with which I am implementing, and I had approximately 7 days of to and fro, and with all the actuaries, no one even has considered surplus distribution. Think about it. We're talking about loss component, but there might be a surplus also which you may need to share with the policyholders, right?
It has to be there, otherwise it is not Sharia compliant.
Sir, no one has got a methodology written on it so far, let me tell you that, including me.
The regulator should intervene.
Yeah, so the regulators are also saying, sir.
Without the surplus distribution, there is no takaful at the end of the day.
True, very true. And, especially, even for the takaful bits, just to tell you, takaful is, because there are so many models on it, and IOF is still trying to get hold of what they want to do. I think IOF has tried to get a draft out, is what I understand, and they're discussing it. But still nothing has come out. Once they do come out, probably there will be more clarity. Till that time, I think we can follow the Malaysian model, or we can follow the Bahrain model, or follow any other model for that matter. These are the things that you need to look at from IFRS 17 for takaful. Moving on, I think as I was mentioning, the IFRS 9 bit has to come in also, and this is where you will see. I'll be showing you now. This is the financial statements of the companies and likely impact. So if you see here, I hope you are able to see. I think let's come straight away here. Your insurance receivables, right? Insurance receivables are likely to give you an impact because of IFRS 9, because of deferred acquisition costs that you need to consider, and so on and so forth. Very important. And again, your equity is going to remain as it is, probably the share capital, but overall equity will reduce because the impact is going to be on the equity for IFRS 17 adoption. More importantly, your liabilities are likely to increase. We have already spoken about how your liabilities are going to increase, right? So these are the things that you need to consider. This is how your potential impact on revenue is likely to be. Your gross premium will not be there, right? It will be insurance service revenue. But you will not be able to book your income on day one, right? We agree. It will be over a period of time. So that is going to decrease. Your unearned premium movement is also going to get impacted because of the liabilities that will increase automatically. Naturally, if your liabilities increase, the expense has to come here somewhere, or the income has to get reduced. That's what you see here. Overall, if I tell you, from an impact perspective, liabilities are going to increase, your expenses are going to increase also, similar. I think with the limit, within the time, I would say, any questions if you have, I'm here. I know everyone is eager to move to the 12th bit. There are a few questions. Okay, go ahead, sir. Maybe you can now switch on the lights a bit.
Yeah, just wanted to ask you more about the top line, as you said in the P&L, for the revenues and for the expenses. So for the revenues, would it be, it's no longer GWP, would it be would it be without the reinsurance? So would we have the revenues as net reinsurance and expenses net reinsurance? So where do they fit in within the category?
Your P&L is going to be looking like insurance service revenue, which will be nothing but your earned premium. Insurance service expense, which would be your claims, commission, expense, and so on and so forth. Not your general admin expenses, please understand. Only commission plus your claims. And below that, there will be something called reinsurance income / expense. That's it. So your reinsurance income expense will include what? Will include the premium that you pay to the reinsurer, the recoveries that you make of the reinsurer, and the commission that it pays you. Everything will come net and put it there. All the detail will go into the notes to the financial statements. And that is where it will stand.
So it's kind of gross versus net for now.
Yes. IFRS 17 clearly moves you from IFRS 4 net accounting and presentation to IFRS 17 into gross accounting and presentation. That's also one of the
opposite. IFRS 17 is the net, no? Not the gross. The net.
Okay, from a presentation perspective, agreed. Yeah. Sorry for that. But when you say net on the P&L is fine. When you go inside the disclosures, you present everything at the gross level. So in essence, sir, what they have done is rather than putting reinsurance service expense and reinsurance service income as separate, they have netted these two numbers together. But this will have no bearing or impact on how you are reporting your current IFRS. Your IFRS 4 current reporting is not basis that. Sometimes you only look at the net and then net accounting is also done, or net reserves are also being managed. Any further questions?
I just want to ask about the time frame for next year. We're going to be kind of doing all of this in 1 month. So I wanted to see the regulator and how it's going to impact us as a whole, as an industry, and if we were able to make it, because we've seen how the impact of IFRS 9 on the banks was also a bit, let's say, complex, and it had to be extended, and some rules had to be broken, and then they came up with a solution. So we're going into something that we haven't heard from the central bank to see what's the time frame, and with other, let's say, governmental institutions where we have to file the financials by the end of the month for each quarter.
So let me tell you that your financial reporting will continue as is with the timelines that are set. That are not going to change. My perspective. Regulator for sure is considerate enough and will consider your request depending upon where you stand. But be very mindful of one fact. This standard has been there for the last 4 years. We have been sleeping a bit. We all agree. And naturally, we thought that probably 1st of January 23 is too far off, and it has just come, and this year has just gone past like this. So I understand that the regulator will also be considerate. However, some regulators have taken a very strong decision and said we are not going to do anything at this point of time. So I would leave it to the regulator and the representative of the regulator to speak post the break, and probably you can ask the question therein. But my view is that regulators have been considerate, they will consider for sure. That's what my view is. Yeah, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, just wanted to ask that question. Do we have any representatives from the sales tax and income tax department for today? Because it's going to impact the P&L and all of that's going to...
Probably I'm not the correct person to answer that.
But it's going to have a great impact on the way they see things.
The bottom line.
The bottom line and how they're going to deal
It
with
will.
it.
It will. And just to tell you, with the corporate tax coming in UAE, naturally you're already considering it. I do see that there is going to be an impact. And probably you may need to get more clarity from the regulator, especially from the tax bit, where are you going to pay taxes on IFRS 4 or IFRS 17 for that matter? If it is IFRS 17, then probably you might safeguard yourself. Or probably there would be some methodologies that would be documented in that sense. Just to tell you, in India, I come from India, so in India, the IFRS 17 is moved to 2025 because of this very reason, that they are not ready with what to do with the tax part. And in India, tax is pretty big.
It's a law, in fact.
Yeah, and it needs a law to differentiate and report. And when you have that, it is kind of, again, in India, just to give you an example, in India, you report your normal financial statements, right? But then for tax purposes, you create another financial statements. And then you report your tax numbers, and then you pay taxes. So probably, things need to be considered. And India is a very, very complex country. I'm not sure about Jordan for that matter, but if there are taxes, it automatically becomes complex. Question? Yeah, please. Can you get the mic here, please? We'll come back to you.
Just, one question. You were mentioning UAE, and I suppose you have seen, the third quarter figures of the UAE market. And I'm sure that many companies are running in parallel, they are doing a parallel IFRS 4 versus IFRS 17. Do you see an important impact or an important difference between IFRS 4 and 17? Is it positive or is it negative? This is my question. Just one comment. We were commenting on companies having difficulties to pay for the payroll blast. Allow me, just to correct, companies who were not able to pay is not because of their financial situation, it is because of nobody till now is able to say if it is, let's say, an accident or it is a terrorist act or it is something else. And in the absence of report, which is in absence of the evidence, the insurers are not paying. Today, reinsurers are paying, and most of them are paying. They are doing some arrangements with companies. But even the smallest companies, because the companies in Lebanon, and I know this because I have been there for 5 years, and in my current position as a secretary, I had to interfere in this matter. The problem is not with the company, the problem is with the absence of reports. And if reinsurers are not paying, direct companies cannot pay. And companies, the problem is not with them, but the problem is with the reinsurer. And this is also, we can call it third party.
No, I totally agree with you, especially with the payroll bit. I can tell you, I agree. Most of the reinsurers just say, we don't know what it is. First tell us what it is, then we start paying.
They are paying.
Now they start paying, yes, I understand. But after probably 2 years. That is where, the smaller companies got, impacted, because they had to an extent in that market, pay some bits and then wait for them to get reclaims to the reinsurer. And fortunately, I would say, so far people have been mindful and have taken a decision based on that. I would say, and limit it to that rather than getting into the politics of it. Yeah, but that's true. I think you had a question first up, was it?
No. In fact, based on the third quarter
Okay, so
performance, what was,
yeah.
what
so
is the difference?
So based on the third quarter numbers, though not out, but we work with at least 9 of them easily. So I can tell you that the impact is generally from an insurance or a general insurance companies, it is in the range of 5 to 7 million dirhams if you are writing somewhere around 100 million. So I would say the impact, not 100 rather, sorry, 70 million. So it's about 10% impact that I see from an IFRS 17 adoption perspective for general insurance. There are certain general insurance companies which have a bigger impact also because of the underwriting that they write. So that naturally is, I would say, company specific. Some of the companies, or I won't say most, but most of the companies are in the range of 10 to 12% impact on the P&L of adoption of IFRS 17.
When you say impact, you mean negative impact, huh?
Always negative. Impact is negative.
Although the top companies, they have something like 21% increase in their profitability, if I'm not mistaken.
You
A
are
few companies. Yeah.
a few companies only, but the impact is there. Yes.
How often insurance companies should do risk adjustment?
Risk.
Adjustment.
Okay. So the risk adjustment has to be done.
And which method should they adopt?
So there are various methodologies, as I was explaining. The risk adjustment generally is based on the data that the company has or carries, right? So what we have seen is that the risk adjustment will be calculated at each reporting date. So in a sense, if you are reporting quarterly, it has to be reported at each time because your triangles will change. Once your triangles change, automatically your risk adjustment is going to change. Yeah. There is a question at the last, if someone can get the mic, please. At the last table there.
Thank you for the lecture. I have a question, please. So you mentioned that once we create a contract today, regardless, like even if it will start next year, we have to create a liability instantly, right?
If it is an onerous contract.
Yes. Okay, let's assume that we pay the commission on the same contract. So would it be considered like a prepaid expense? So regardless of the fact that we can either amortize it or expense it, but because the risk will start next year or even the contract will start next year.
So you will consider, from an accounting perspective, let me give you an example of how it's going to work out. You say generally insurance companies don't pay the commission until they get the revenue, okay, or the premium. So I'm assuming that you received the premium. If you have not received the premium, the commission is also sitting, outside. So let's take it more simplistic view. If you don't book any revenue, will you book any expense? The answer is no. Correct? So that is outside. What the standard says is, if you have written a policy and there is a likely loss that you are going to get on it, right? You book all the liabilities relating to it. So in onerous contract discussions that we talk about, you will be booking your UPR, for example, whatever your UPR is, which is LFRC now, plus the loss component, which is the onerousness of the contract. And this onerousness of contract, what it takes into account? It takes into account how much commission you are likely to pay and how much ultimate loss ratios you are going to cater to, right? So both of them will automatically come into the picture. Your prepaid can be booked in this case, and it will. But if you book a prepaid also, what you are doing is you are booking your expense. So in your loss component, then it will get reduced. So eventually, if you book your loss component and LFRC only, that can stay. Or if you book a prepaid, this prepaid will get deducted from this.
And the same question, like when we do the grouping, again, even if the contract starts next year, you've mentioned that we make the grouping based on the underwriting year, right?
Correct.
Like when we do it. So what will apply? Is it the underwriting year when we underwrite it or when the contract starts?
So in this case, because your underwriting year is 2020, okay, but it's a loss-making contract, you are going to group it under the 2020 but under the loss component itself. So it will be the 2020 bit here.
Thank you.
I think we are really short on time, so I'll quickly take the first question. There is a question here in the last area, please. If someone can help. He's coming to you.
First of all, thank you for your efforts. I have two questions. As you know, some of companies have variable linked units in their products. It's called VOL.
Can you repeat that? I didn't get it.
Okay, some of companies have in their products variable linked units that variable. Yeah, okay. So it will be treated under IFRS 17. So can we treat the investment portion in those products under the investment accounting standards, let's say IAS 28? That's the first question. And the second one is...
So let me just answer that. Yeah. So if you have variability therein that you're talking about, your valuation of the investments will go under IFRS 9, your liabilities will go under IFRS 17. That's the standard itself. Okay?
Okay. The second one, how would the presentation would be for reinsurance? As you said, the presentation would be on a gross basis, not on net basis.
So let me tell you this. Maybe I confused it a bit for all of you. So let me simplify. So the groups will be calculated on a gross basis. Groups where your accounting will happen. The presentation on the P&L is going to be just net. That's it. Just to give you a simplistic view, all your accounting has to be at gross level. That is not changing. That is a big change from IFRS 4 to IFRS 17, and you will have to abide by that. Only presentation is going to be at net level, that too only for your P&L. Your disclosure requirements will all be at the gross level. Any further questions? Okay, there's one here. Sorry, we'll come back to you.
You mentioned that IFRS 17 will be more on a cash basis. So what will happen to the concept of receivables?
Good question. So when I say that it will be on cash basis, I'm not saying that we are moving away from the accrual accounting that we currently do. We'll stick to it. What it does is it takes into account the expected cash flows. So in essence, it gives a bigger weight to your likely collection of cash. When we talk about, as I was mentioning, your base accounting or base calculation is what your cash flows. So rather than I understanding based on, okay, I have contract, I have written and I am booking the income, here it is limited to not only the cash flows, but also then taking into account the rest part. So cash flows will be the basis for it. We are not changing from accrual accounting. That will stay as is. You will have both accrual as well as cash, which will drive it.
So we'll have receivables in the balance sheet?
Yes. And your receivables, just to tell you, all your receivables will, in your balance sheet, will get into or get impacted into the insurance contract liabilities. So let me give you an example. When you disclose your liability for remaining coverage or your liability for incurred claims, you will not be showing your receivable as is. No. Your receivables will be merged with the limit liability for remaining coverage. That means what? You have written business, but you have not received the money. So your limit liability for remaining coverage will go down. Okay, so your disclosure is going to be very difficult here. Just to tell you, that's the starting point here that we're talking about. LFRC remains as is. You remove or you reduce your receivables from there, and that is where your number comes in. However, you will be booking your IFRS 9 expected credit loss provisioning on the gross receivable number. It is just making life more complicated, let me tell you that. I think there was there's one there and there's one here also, please. And guys, I'm really sorry to hold you back. Apologies for that in advance.
Thank you for the last statement that you have said about the accounts receivables, that you have to deduct from the liabilities. I don't think this will fly because there is a commitment, a legal commitment. Once you issue a contract, you are legally commitment to the client. So if you would like to disclose the liability discounted or minus the accounts receivables that not paid money, then this will not reflect the real picture in the statements. So what do you think about this?
So let me explain it. When I say that it will be net, I'm talking about disclosure only. You will still carry the receivables in your books. You will still calculate the provisioning requirement under IFRS 9 on that. It is only the disclosure that is going to change, that you will be making sure that your LFRC gets impacted by the receivables.
Even for the disclosures, the purpose for the disclosures is to provide honest view for the financial records to the investors and other stakeholders. So if we are going to present only the net value and to make the discount for the non-paid accounts premiums, let's say, then this will lead to or to window dressing maybe. So what I'm saying is that the purpose or the objective of the standard is to provide an honest picture about the current and real situation in the organization. And that's why I don't think this will fly.
I am with you on that. It makes life more difficult, but just understand one thing. IFRS 17 is literally grossing up your balance sheets. Your liabilities will increase, your assets will also increase because you will be doing gross accounting, right? Your receivables will come on the asset side. Your liabilities will be on the liability side. Mostly, if there are some contracts which are giving you assets, will also be on the top. Just understand one more and important thing, that we are only talking about an impact, right? Being an insurance company, you have signed a contract. The person is not paid. You are still giving or paying all the claims. Probably this standard gives some impetus that okay, there are still receivables standing, so it gives you a benefit, I would say, just a little bit. That's it. And again, that is the standard. People have discussed it. Let me tell you this: as to do they want to show receivables separately and insurance contract liabilities separately? That is a decision that probably the regulators and auditors will also further discuss. In different markets, different disclosures are being looked at. Ideally, if you read the standard, the requirement is that you have both together. Go ahead.
Hi. Thank you for this opportunity. I just have one question regarding the receivables. And you're saying that you have to show the net level the financial position, correct?
Which one?
Regarding the receivables you're speaking, right?
Yes.
So that means you want to record the receivables for the insurance contract. But then you have to net them off with the unaccrued, you have to record them with the unaccrued premiums.
Correct.
Because you have to show the net of, you have to show the net amounts of receivables that you have provided the service for but not collected.
Agreed. So that is the same point that I mentioned to you. So ideally your liability for remaining coverage will still be there. You will reduce the receivables from it. It is kind of I would say, a requirement on the standard. Now, you being a company, and as you understand, financial statements are the management's, right? So you can take a view and say, I am not going to club it together, I am going to show it separately. That is a decision that is with you and your regulator and auditors to confirm. Most of the companies are going with only insurance contract liabilities.
Okay, sorry, but because there is a standard for understandability in the conceptual framework of the IFRS, so understandability it begins from the beginning. You have two types of insurance contracts. The ones that you had already received the cash flows for, and the ones you did not receive a cash flows for. So when you speak that we have to net off the LRC with the receivables, that means you only have one figure in financial position. And that will not be correct.
I think I get your point, but let me just explain to you. You are only focusing on LFRC.
But there is ARC as well.
Yeah, there is ARC as well. And Just to tell you, once you have LFRC or ARC for that matter, you also have the disclosures. So in a sense, your disclosures are going to be pretty detailed. And your receivable, as we say, receivable disclosure will be there because you are likely to do the ECL provisioning. You will show my total receivable was 100 and I am taking a 10 million provision on it. So that would be there. I do understand it's a sticking point. We may not probably, get an answer to it, but this is something that is there in the standard. And probably until we get a view of how the IFRS 17 financial statements come out and the regulators accept it, that is something that we can discuss all day long.
But also function and nature has to be presented as well.
That is true.
So we cannot club them together.
I agree with you. I am not saying I disagree, but that's what the standard.
I believe my colleague also had a question.
Can you get the mic here, please?
Thank you.
I think after this we are only taking one more question, or I am going to get kicked by Luke here. Okay? Just joking. Yes, go ahead.
When you're calculating the loss component, can take place the PDR reserve?
So, loss component is nothing but the PDR itself, okay, under IFRS 4. The only thing is that the loss component that you calculate under IFRS 17 would have those additional, I would say, requirements also, like risk adjustment and so on. So when you calculate a loss component, say if your number is 100 on a group of contracts, and you are already calculating a PDR, creating a PDR of 30 for that matter. So the impact is 70 for you. So you need to get that 70. You will be considering the PDR when we look at the loss component number.
Yeah, another question.
So that's the last question for today, for this session at least. Go ahead.
It's very important for us as a Takaful model.
Huh.
I will come back to the Takaful model.
Go ahead.
When considering wakala fees as part of fulfillment cash flow, can I divide it into attributable and non-attributable expenses? Wakala fees?
So wakala fees, we are talking about policyholders now or shareholders?
For policyholders.
So the wakala fee is an expense. Agree? That's gone. Now when you do the cash flows, you will have to consider wakala fees. And that will be the attributable expense. Because you are not paying any other expense as a policyholder, right? As a policyholder, what is your expense? Your expense is only wakala fees. The rest, general admin, everything else is being taken care of by the shareholder. But here I understand sir was mentioning that the commission expense is also taken care by the policyholders, which is not the case in UAE for that matter. So if the commission expense is taken care by the policyholder, wakala fees have to be still considered in the policyholder. So policyholder automatically, if you pay a premium of 100 and pay 35% as wakala fees, 35 is gone. If you pay another commission of say 20%, 20 is gone. So you are left with 45 only to play with. And if your ULRs are more than 45, you are lost me.
But the wakala fees, can I divide it or I can cover many of things like, okay, can you cover commissions and you cover technical expense, but you can cover management expense. Can I suppose this management expense non-attributable expense?
Management expenses are always non-attributable. Cannot be attributable to the insurance contract.
This part of wakala fees, I mean.
So, okay, I think you need to differentiate. If it is under policyholder and you are saying premium minus wakala fees 35% for example, you have to consider it as attributable expense. If you come to shareholders, there is no attributable, non-attributable. Shareholder has nothing to do with insurance operations itself. So for all practical purposes, wakala fees will always be an attributable expense for you. Always.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much everyone. Thanks a lot for hearing to me and for the time. I think now we have the break, but